Hey there guys, Kelly with the mkIIIsupras channel. Here we are back with a part 2 to the 7 mkIII head gasket replacement. And I apologize for the wait. It took me a very long time to find a good replacement cylinder head, and an even longer time to find someone to machine it. Everyone was really busy around in my area, so it took me a good about 6 months before I was able to find someone to do it. And I found a friend that was willing to let me use his machine shop. I disassembled the head there, cleaned it, ground the valves, replaced the valve stem seals, and reassembled it after he had decked the sealing surface for me. And I got charged $50 for all that work, which I was very pleased with. But yeah, so here we are, finally back with a video of putting it all back together for you guys. And what I'm going to do now is start by cleaning both the sealing surfaces very good with just some trusty old paper towel and a can of acetone. You just put a little bit on the rag and wipe the sealing surfaces really good. You don't want any oils or any debris on the sealing surface when you do go to put the gasket on, because it could cause issues. And also remember, before the gasket goes on, you will put some form in place gasket right here and right here. As you can see, I still have to clean out this from the last time the head was on. But yeah, I'll get back with you guys after I get all these sealing surfaces cleaned up, and I'll show you step by step of how we're putting the head back on. Thanks. Alright, I kind of skipped a step, and I forgot to tell you guys that you absolutely have to make sure your head, or excuse me, both your head and your block are completely straight. I had borrowed a machinist straight edge and made sure my block was good before I proceeded. Otherwise, I would have pulled that block out of here, torn the engine down, which I would have hated to do, and I would have had the block cut also. But I lucked out, didn't have to do that. And like I said in my previous video, this engine has very little miles on it on the rebuild. It was rebuilt. It used a bad head that was annealed, so it pretty much overheated immediately on the previous owner, and they really didn't get to enjoy it at all. So I ended up with this car for free because of it. But when you do things right, you can enjoy them for many years, like I have with my white car. Been driving that thing for 15 years now, and it doesn't skip a beat for me. For this head gasket job, I decided to go with an Ajusa head gasket. Part number 10082,600. This is for any 7 mkIII, 7 mkTE overbore engine, which mine is. Mine is bored over. So that was a big reason the last cylinder head had failed. They had used a stock bore head gasket, which was a Fel-Pro one, and a head shim to make up for all the material taken off the cylinder head, and it was just a recipe for disaster. So I started over, bought a new head, had it cut, and we are going to use a good quality gasket on this job. So I will unpack that. I will show you where to put the form in place gasket, or right stuff, whatever silicone you use for oil, and we will proceed from there. Alright guys, I got both sealing surfaces cleaned up very good. Got my head gasket out. Inspected it. Very happy with the quality. I can tell there is a little sticky substance on the bottom of this to help seal to the block, which is nice. And also I wanted to mention, I think one of the biggest reasons, besides all those other reasons I gave you, for this thing to overheat so easily, was each one of these head bolt holes was completely full of oil, dirt, whatever. And none of the head bolts were consistent torque. So that was another contributing factor why this failed so bad, so fast and so bad on them. And I will show you how to fix it. So you will want to buy a M12 by 1.25 thread pitch tap. Run it down each one of your head bolt holes. Just use your finger. Sometimes if you get into some good gunk, you'll have to put a wrench on it or whatever. But I already went through and did all of these. I just wanted to show you guys that it is very, very important to have clean head bolt holes before you install this. So I will show you how to put the sealant down here. What I'm using is Toyota Seal Packing form in place gasket for oil pan camshaft housing sealing. And what you want to do is just put a tiny little bead right across the top here. A tiny little bead right here in the corner where the rear timing cover meets the block, because oil does run down there. And you want that to seal up. Otherwise you will get oil all over your timing assembly and you could cause all sorts of issues there. So now that that's on, I can place the head gasket down. Make sure you guys clean your hands very good before you go and touching this. And I'm just going to put a tiny bit more here, just to make sure. Alright, unfortunately, I'm going to have to pause it to set the cylinder head down because, I mean, it's heavy enough and trying to hold it with one hand would be next to impossible. So I'll be right back with you. About to set that bad boy on the block, and then we can show you guys how to put your cams in and check for valve lash, because this will be my first time doing it on a 7M also, and I have a ton of extra shims to work with from trash cylinder heads I have laying around. So I will be back with you once I get the cylinder head down onto the block. Alright guys, finally got the head on the frickin' block. It was kind of a little bit of a fight, being that I left these exhaust studs in the side of the head. I was looking for a couple of nuts to twist on there and pull those out, but I just could not find any in here. And so I just loosened up. There's a bracket down on the side of the block. It's a 14 millimeter way down here. You loosen up that bolt, and it allows you to pull the exhaust over enough to get the head on in place without removing the whole exhaust manifold. So yeah, now you go and you take whatever. You can be using OEM head bolts. You could be using ARP head studs, which is the preferred method. But I am using some ARP head bolts. And I will be torquing them to ARP's recommended specs, which is 90 foot-pounds, using their Ultra Lube assembly lubricant right here. Ultra Torque fastener lube. So you put a tiny little bit on the threads, and I usually put a tiny little bit on the bottom of the washer, and I throw them in there and I tighten them down in increments, 3 increments up to 90 foot-pounds. So first pass I'll do, say, 40 pounds. Next time I'll do 65, 70, and then down to that final torque of 90. And to torque it, I will be using my digital snap-on torque wrench here. It's a 3/8 drive up to 125 foot-pounds. So it should be pretty damn accurate using that thing. So I'm going to get the bolts all lubed up. I'll show you one of them before I start putting them in there. And then we'll get to torquing. Alright guys, here's the last head bolt. As you can see, I got some of that ARP lube on the threads. And I'm going to stick it in the hole. I already got all the other bolts in and hand tight. So just to save some pauses in the video, save myself some time. Just run them in by hand, like so. Alright, I'm going to get my torque wrench set up. And I'm going to do the first pass at 35 foot-pounds. So crank it up to 35. And she's ready to go. Alright, as you can see in my repair manual here, this is a sequence we'll be tightening the head bolts, starting in the middle, and you start working your way out in a crisscross pattern. And you do that in 3 different stages. So first pass will be 35 foot-pounds. And as you can see in the book here, it tells you the torque spec for the head bolts is only 58 foot-pounds. Well, that's another reason why these head gaskets on these 7Ms went out prematurely. They switched over from a asbestos head gasket that was used on the 5MGE and with those torque specs, and it worked just fine. And they switched over to composite, kept those torque specs, and it didn't work fine. So here we go. We'll start by tightening up the middle. It's going to be tricky one-handed, so I'm probably going to show you how to get started and maybe just the final pass, but maybe I'll show you guys all of it. Alright, there's 35. I can already tell 90 foot-pounds is going to feel severely excessive, but I believe ARP knows what they want. Their bolts tightened too, more than I would, so. There's 35 for that one. Crisscross up front here. straight down. Alright. Open over here. Back on the exhaust side. Yeah, I'm probably only going to be able to show you guys the first pass because it's going to get hard to pull on the torque wrench and film at the same time. So now we go all the way to the rear ones here. Alright. And I'll jump up here. Oh, back's locking up. Excuse me. And one more in the back here. Get on it. I might have to go on the other side of the